Hello friends! Imagine this, it's August 1947. A man is sitting alone in a closed room in Delhi. In front of him are a few papers, some population tables, a pencil, and a map of India. This man is about to draw a line with this pencil, a line that will force people to leave their homes. He doesn't know that millions will be killed because of what he's about to do. He doesn't even really know where the lines he's drawing are located. In fact, until a few days ago, this man had never even set foot in India. His name was Sir Cyril Radcliffe, a famous English lawyer. So, why him? The British government wanted someone completely neutral, someone with no ties to India, no bias towards Congress or the Muslim League, to draw the border between India and Pakistan. And they found their man in Radcliffe. Let's rewind a bit. Just a few weeks earlier, on June 3, 1947, a voice echoed across all India radio. It was Lord Louis Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India, announcing that the British were leaving. India would be free on August 15, 1947. But there was a catch, a huge one. The country would be divided. Mountbatten's logic was that no large community should be forced to live under a government where another community had the majority. The British felt like they were sitting on a ticking time bomb and wanted to get out as fast as possible. In their haste, they made one of the most devastating decisions in history, the Partition of India. But it wasn't just about creating India and Pakistan. There were also 565 princely states, many of whose rulers were dreaming of creating their own independent countries. If that had happened, the map of India would have looked like Swiss cheese full of holes. This video is the story of that border. How was this line drawn? Why did millions become refugees overnight? Why did such horrific violence break out? And how were these 565 kings convinced to join India? First, what would the new countries be called? Muhammad Ali Jinnah insisted his country be named Pakistan. Congress wanted India to remain India. Jinnah had a problem with this. He argued that since both countries were emerging from British India, they should be named together as Pakistan and Hindustan. But Congress leaders, including Jawaharlal Nehru, argued that Pakistan was breaking away from India. So, why should India change its name? Nehru presented this to Mountbatten, who found it logical and agreed. This decision deeply upset Jinnah. But the bigger question was, where would the border be? Nehru and Jinnah distrusted each other so much that they couldn't agree on a single inch of the map. This is why the British brought in an outsider, Sir Cyril Radcliffe. When Radcliffe arrived in India in July 1947, he thought he'd have months to complete this massive task. But Mountbatten gave him a shock. He had until August 15th, just over a month. Radcliffe was given for advisors from Congress and from the Muslim League, but they spent most of their time fighting each other. The basic principle was simple. Muslim majority districts would go to Pakistan, and Hindu and Sikh majority districts would stay in India. But the maps were outdated and the population data was unreliable. Two cities became huge headaches for Radcliffe: Calcutta and Lahore. Calcutta, despite its large Muslim population, had a Hindu majority and was a vital economic hub. It was given to India. Lahore was trickier. It had roughly 600,000 Muslims, 500,000 Hindus, and 100,000 Sikhs. No clear majority. Radcliffe initially considered giving Lahore to India, but then he thought, if both major cities go to India, what will Pakistan have? So, he gave Lahore to Pakistan. The division wasn't just about land. Everything had to be split. Every government file, every piece of office furniture, from ceiling fans down to the last bought pen. There's a famous story about 60 ducks ordered by the Bengal government from England. They arrived in Calcutta in July 1947 with a bill for £250. The question arose, whose ducks were they? West Bengals or East Bengals? Could they be divided 30 to 30? The finance secretary refused to pay, and the poor ducks were left forgotten in a warehouse. From ducks to typewriters to library books, everything became a point of contention. Radcliffe, for his part, refused his fee of £2,000, considering the work his duty to the British Empire. He had no idea of the human cost his lines would inflict. On the morning of August 13th, 1947, Radcliffe delivered his report to Mountbatten. Mountbatten took one look at it and locked it in a safe. He decided to keep the borders a secret until after Independence Day. He knew that no matter what the decision, both sides would be furious. He wanted people to celebrate their freedom first and deal with the border problem later. So, on August 15, 1947, India and Pakistan celebrated their independence. But millions of people woke up not knowing which country they were now citizens of. District magistrates didn't know whether to report to Delhi or the new capital, Karachi. Finally, after the celebrations, Mountbatten gave sealed copies of the report to Prime Minister Nehru and Pakistan's Prime Minister, Liaquat Ali Khan. They went into separate rooms to study the maps. 2 hours later, they emerged absolutely furious. A major point of conflict was the Gurdospa district. It was a Muslim-majority area, but Radcliffe had given most of it to India. Why? Because the Ravi River formed a natural boundary, and more importantly, without Gurdospa, India would have no practical land route to Kashmir. This one decision, perhaps unintentionally, gave India a direct path to stake its claim on Kashmir. On August 17th, the borders were finally made public. What followed in Punjab was the largest mass migration in human history. Radcliffe's line had left 5 million Sikhs and Hindus on the Pakistan side of Punjab, and over 5 million Muslims on the Indian side. All of them were now refugees, forced to walk towards a new country most had never seen. The roads of Punjab were filled with columns of people stretching for 50 miles. The elderly in bullock carts, children on their parents' shoulders, carrying whatever little they could salvage from their lives. The British had created a Punjab boundary force of 55,000 soldiers to keep the peace, but it was a drop in the ocean against the tide of 2 crore displaced people. The violence that erupted was unimaginable, symbolized by the horror of the ghost trains. On the evening of August 15th itself, a train from Lahore pulled into Amritsar station in eerie silence. When the doors were opened, it was filled with the dead bodies of Hindus and Sikhs. A message was scrawled on the side: "This train is our independence gift to Nehru and Patel." These ghost trains started arriving from both sides, carrying the tragic price of freedom. But for Mountbatten, the real nightmare wasn't Punjab. It was Calcutta. There was no boundary force for Calcutta, and he feared uncontrollable riots in its dense, crowded streets. So, at the end of July, he went to Mahatma Gandhi with a strange request. He asked Gandhi to go to Calcutta and do what no army could: use his moral authority to keep the peace. Gandhi agreed. He arrived in Calcutta and chose to stay in a dilapidated building, in a riot-torn Muslim neighborhood, and he brought with him Hussain Shahid Sohrabdi, the man many Hindus blamed for the horrific Calcutta killings of 1946. Gandhi laid down to conditions for Sohrabdi. He had to personally guarantee the safety of Hindus, and he had to live with Gandhi without any weapons or security. At first, people were angry, but then, on August 15th, a miracle happened. There were no riots. Hindus and Muslims who were enemies just days before were seen hugging each other on the streets. For 16 days, there was peace, but eventually, the horror stories from Punjab reached Calcutta and the violence returned. Gandhi immediately went to the worst-hit area and announced a fast unto death. On September 1st, 1947, he began his fast. Within 3 days, he was visibly weak. As the news spread, the mood of the city changed. People poured onto the streets carrying pictures of Bapu. Hindus and Muslims marched together for peace. In a powerful moment, a group of 27 gang leaders who had been leading the riots came to Gandhi, confessed their crimes and laid their weapons at his feet. Gandhi told them to go and protect the very people they had been attacking. On the evening of September 4th, after 73 hours, Gandhi broke his fast. This event came to be known as the Miracle of Calcutta. Because of Gandhi's fast, not a single communal riot occurred in the city until after his death. It was a small beacon of hope in one of the darkest chapters of our history. The story of partition is a painful reminder of the human cost of political decisions made in haste. When we think of 1947, we mostly think of the partition of India and Pakistan, but that's only half the story. The other half, the story of how modern India was actually created is even more dramatic. Back then, within British India, there were over 500 princely states, basically independent kingdoms. For decades, the British were the paramount power, meaning they called all the shots. But when the British decided to leave, they didn't have a clear plan for these kingdoms. The cabinet mission of 1946? It was all about the Hindu-Muslim question, completely ignoring the princes. Then, on June 3, 1947, the British dropped a bombshell: India would be divided into the dominions. But what about the 565 princely states? Suddenly, their rulers started dreaming of independence. After all, if the British were leaving, shouldn't power return to them? Imagine an India with hundreds of independent countries inside it. No single army, no national currency, just chaos. This was the nightmare scenario that Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel knew he had to prevent. He took on the monumental task of uniting India. But how? This is where Lord Mountbatten, the last viceroy, plays a crucial role. He proposed a deal to Patel. Let the kings keep their titles, their palaces, their privy purses and their privileges. In return, Mountbatten would convince them to join India before August 15th. Patel, a pragmatist, immediately agreed. He famously used an analogy: each princely state was an apple, and he tasked Mountbatten with bringing all 565 apples into India's basket. Right around this time, Jawaharlal Nehru made a brilliant strategic move. He offered Mountbatten the position of the first Governor-General of independent India. This wasn't just flattery. Nehru knew Mountbatten's royal connections and his influence over the Indian princes were invaluable assets. Mountbatten accepted. Interestingly, Pakistan's leader, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, chose to become Governor-General himself, ignoring Mountbatten's advice that the real power would lie with the Prime Minister. With the deal in place, Sardar Patel brought in his secret weapon, VP Menon, a brilliant and powerful Indian civil servant. Together, Menon and Mountbatten became the duo tasked with this historic integration. They used a masterclass of diplomacy, a mix of logical explanation, subtle intimidation, and irresistible deals. It was a race against time. Most kings, seeing the writing on the wall, signed the instrument of accession. But for many, it was a painful surrender of their legacy. The young king of Jodhpur, for example, was terrified of Congress's socialist policies. He secretly met with Jinnah, who offered him a blank check, literally a blank paper, to write down his own terms for joining Pakistan. But VP Menon got wind of it. Mountbatten was called in, and after a tense meeting, the young Maharaja agreed to join India. The drama wasn't over. After signing the papers, he pulled out a tiny pistol and pointed it at Menon's head, shouting, "I will not be dictated to." Mountbatten calmly disarmed him. Then there's the bizarre story of Junagadh. The Nawab, or ruler, was Muslim, but over 80% of his people were Hindu. The state was completely surrounded by Indian territory. Now, this Nawab had a peculiar passion: dogs. He owned over 1,000 of them, each with its own room and servant. His advisor, Sir Shanawaz Bhutto, convinced him that if he joined India, he wouldn't be able to keep his beloved dogs. So, on August 14, 1947, Junagadh announced it was joining Pakistan. Jinnah, seeing a chance to use Junagadh as a bargaining chip for the bigger prize, Kashmir, formally accepted. Sardar Patel wasn't having any of it. He ordered the Indian army to surround Junagadh. The pressure was immense. The Nawab, realizing the game was up, fled to Karachi, taking his family and his favorite dogs with him. On November 9, 1947, after a public vote when 91% of the people chose India, Junagadh officially became part of the Indian Union. But the biggest challenge of all was Kashmir. Here, the situation was reversed. The Maharaja, Hari Singh, was Hindu, but the majority of the population was Muslim. Hari Singh had his own dream: an independent Kashmir, a Switzerland of the East. In July 1947, Mountbatten personally advised him that given his population, joining Pakistan was the logical choice. Hari Singh refused. Mountbatten then suggested joining India. Again, Hari Singh refused. Mountbatten left him with a chilling warning: if you don't decide, you could lose your state to war. His words proved prophetic. In September 1947, a secret plan was hatched in Pakistan. Pathan tribesmen from the northwest frontier were promised loot and glory if they invaded Kashmir. On October 24th, the invasion began. The Mahura power station, which supplied electricity to Srinagar, was blown up, plunging the capital into darkness. Hari Singh's own army either fled or joined the invaders. The Maharaja was now a king without an army, his capital about to fall. In desperation, he sent an urgent plea to India for help. Nehru agreed, but on one crucial condition: Hari Singh had to formally sign the Instrument of Accession, making Kashmir legally part of India. On October 26, 1947, a desperate Hari Singh signed the document. The very next morning, on October 27th, India launched its first major military operation as an independent nation. 329 soldiers of the Sikh regiment were airlifted and landed at the Srinagar airport. How was this possible? Because of a fatal mistake by the invaders. Instead of capturing the airport first, they got distracted by looting the town of Baramulla. They even attacked a Christian convent, committing horrific atrocities. This crucial delay gave the Indian army the window it needed to secure the airport and save Srinagar. An enraged Jinnah ordered the Pakistani army to march into Kashmir, but the British commander-in-chief of the Pakistan army refused the order, avoiding a full-scale war between the two new nations. Instead, Jinnah sent Pakistani soldiers disguised as tribal invaders to continue the fight. Over the next few months, the Indian army fought bravely, establishing a protective ring around Srinagar and slowly pushing the invaders back. They recaptured Baramulla and then Uri. But the conflict was far from over. On January 1, 1948, acting on Mountbatten's advice, India took the issue to the newly formed United Nations. The argument was simple: Kashmir had legally acceded to India, and Pakistan's forces were illegal occupiers. A year later, a ceasefire was signed. It drew a line right where the armies stood the ceasefire line, which we now know as the line of control. And so, Kashmir, a state that had legally and entirely joined India, was left tragically divided, with a part of it under Pakistani occupation. With the integration of these princely states, the map of India finally began to look like the one we know today. Of course, some French and Portuguese colonies joined later, and Sikkim became a part of India in 1975 after a referendum. The story of making India is one of incredible vision and steely resolve. Without the duo of Sardar Patel and VP Menon, our map today would look like Swiss cheese, a patchwork of hundreds of tiny countries. The Partition of 1947 was a deep tragedy, but the integration of India was nothing short of a miracle, and these two stories happened side by side. This is the real, complex and dramatic story of 1947. Thanks for watching. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more hidden histories.